The impossible test, the Galactic Institute of Advanced Combat Studies, had a reputation. Students from across 12 star systems came here to prove their species worthy of military leadership. The Academy's most feared course was Survival Protocol 7, where failure meant more than just bad grades. It meant death. Professor Zithkar, a towering reptilian from the Vorthan Empire, stood before his mixed species class. His yellow eyes scanned the nervous faces of his students. Crystalline beings from Nexus Prime sat rigid in their seats. The insectoid Clitter warriors clicked their mandibles anxiously. Even the massive Gorillian shock troops looked uneasy. Today's assignment, Zethkar announced, his voice echoing through the chamber, is the nightmare scenario. You will face the most dangerous predator simulation ever created. The Void Stalker. The room fell silent. Every student knew about the Void Stalker. It was a creature of pure nightmare, designed by military scientists to be the perfect killer. 6 meters. Tall, armored hide that deflected plasma fire, and intelligence that could outthink most sentient beings. No student had ever survived the full simulation. The record survival time is 4 minutes and 12 seconds, Zethkar continued, held by Kroziner of the Gorillian Elite Guard. He gestured to the massive gray-skinned warrior who sat in the back row. Kroziner's tusks gleamed as he nodded proudly. Then Professor Zethkar Esbies fell on the quiet figure in the corner. Marcus Webb, the only human in the class. He was unremarkable by most standards. Average height, round hair, no natural armor or claws. The other students had been puzzled when he'd been accepted into the academy. Mr. Webb, Zethkar said, his tone carrying barely concealed disdain. Perhaps you'd like to go first. Show us what Earth's finest can accomplish. The alien students snickered. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as the species that somehow survived on a death world, but they were considered more lucky than skilled. Their technology was primitive. Their bodies fragile. Marcus stood up slowly, adjusting his standard issue. Uniform. Sure, Professor. Sounds like fun. The casual response sent ripples of disbelief through the classroom. Fun? The Void Stalker simulation was designed to break the minds of the galaxy's fiercest warriors. And this soft-skinned human called it fun? As Marcus walked toward the simulation chamber, Vix Ara, a 4-armed Zenthari assassin, leaned over to her. Neighbor, he's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. My credits are on stupid, replied Gorth, a hulking Brutarian whose species was known for their tactical genius. Marcus paused at the chamber entrance and looked back at his classmates. There wasn't fear in his eyes. There wasn't even concern. Instead, there was something that made several students shift uncomfortably in their seats. It was the look of someone who had already solved the problem before anyone else realized. There was one. The chamber door sealed behind him with a hiss that sounded like a death sentence. The hunt begins. The simulation chamber transformed around Marcus. Gone were the sterile walls and bright lighting. In their place materialized a hostile alien landscape. Jagged rock formations stretched toward a blood-red sky. Twisted metal debris from crashed starships littered the ground. The air itself seemed to pulse with menace. Through the observation windows, Marcus's classmates watched as environmental readings flashed across screens. Temperature, minus 40 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere, toxic to most species. Gravity, 3 times galactic standard. It was a nightmare environment designed to disorient and weaken any participant before the real threat arrived. Initiate Void Stalker Protocol, Professor Zethkar commanded. Deep within the simulation, something stirred. The Void Stalker was unlike anything in nature. Military scientists had combined the worst traits of dozens of apex predators. It had the stealth of a shadow cat, the cunning of a Terran octopus, and the killing instinct of a Vorthan battle worm. Its biomechanical enhancements made it nearly indestructible. Marcus stood perfectly still in the center of the wasteland. While other students had immediately run for cover or tried to find weapons, he simply closed his eyes and listened. The alien observers exchanged confused glances. "What is he doing?" whispered Keshla, a graceful Avalon scout whose species had enhanced hearing. "Probably praying to whatever primitive gods his species worships," Gorth muttered. But Marcus wasn't praying. He was doing something far more dangerous. He was thinking like a human. On Earth, Marcus had grown up in the Australian outback. He'd learned to read environments the way other species read data streams. Every sound, every scent, every shift in air pressure told a story. In this alien hellscape, he was already building a map of possibilities. The Void Stalker moved through the twisted landscape with predatory grace. Its adaptive camouflage made it nearly invisible as it stalked its prey. Thermal sensors showed Marcus as a lone heat signature, unaware and vulnerable. But Marcus had already detected the creature. Not through sight or sound, but through something more primitive. On Earth, humans had survived by developing an almost supernatural awareness of when they were being hunted. That ancient instinct was screaming warnings now. "There you are," Marcus murmured, his eyes still closed. The Void Stalker struck without warning, launching itself from behind a twisted metal beam. Its claws extended, biomechanical jaws opened wide enough to bite a human in half. It moved faster than most beings could even track. Marcus moved faster. He didn't dodge backward like his instructors had taught. He didn't try to block or parry. Instead, he did something completely unexpected. He stepped forward, directly into the creature's attack path. The watching aliens gasped in horror. It looked like suicide, but Marcus had timed it perfectly. The Void Stalker's momentum carried it over him as he dropped and rolled. The creature's claws whistled through empty air where his head had been a split second before. "Impossible," breathed Professor Zethkar. "No one has ever gotten inside the Stalker's reach on the first attack." Marcus came up from his roll, already moving. While the Void Stalker landed and spun to face him, he had vaulted onto a piece of debris and was scrambling higher. But he wasn't running away. He was positioning himself. The creature roared in frustration and leaped after him. Again, Marcus moved with perfect timing, swinging from one piece of wreckage to another, like some primitive ancestor in Earth's ancient forests. "He's playing with it," Vixara whispered in amazement. Turning the tables, 5 minutes had passed. Marcus had already broken the Academy record, but he showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, he seemed to be getting more comfortable with each passing moment. The Void Stalker, designed to be the perfect hunter, was becoming increasingly agitated. Professor Zethkar studied the readouts with growing confusion. "The creature's stress levels are climbing. This shouldn't be possible." What the professor didn't understand was that Marcus was doing more than just surviving. He was learning. Every attack the Void Stalker made revealed something about its programming, its limitations, its predictable patterns. Marcus had noticed something crucial. The creature was designed by committee. Different species had contributed their ideas of what made the perfect predator, but they had created something with contradictory instincts. It had the patience of an ambush hunter, but the aggression of a pursuit predator. It wanted to stalk silently, but also to intimidate with displays of power. "You're confused, aren't you?" Marcus called out to the creature as he balanced on a narrow beam 20 feet above the ground. "Too many voices in your head telling you how to hunt." The Void Stalker snarled and began climbing after him, its claws finding purchase in the twisted metal. Marcus waited until it was committed to the climb, then kicked a loose piece of debris. The metal chunk struck the creature in the head, not hard enough to cause damage, but enough to throw off its balance. As the Void Stalker fell, Marcus dropped down behind it. For a moment, he was close enough to touch the supposedly indestructible predator. Instead of attacking, he studied it with the calm focus of a scientist examining a specimen. Biomechanical joints, here and here, he muttered to himself, noting. Weak points that the creature's designers had overlooked. Probably need regular maintenance. And that armor plating has gaps for mobility. The watching students were transfixed. What had started as entertainment, watching the strange human get torn apart, had become something else entirely. They were witnessing a master class in adaptation. Krausnar, the previous record holder, leaned forward in his seat. He's not fighting it. He's studying it. Like it's homework, added Gorth, his tactical mind finally grasping what he was seeing dot by. The 10-minute mark, Marcus had completely changed the dynamic of the encounter. The Void Stalker was no longer hunting him. It was reacting to him. Every move the creature made was in response to something Marcus had done first. Marcus had found the creature's blind spot, a small area where its sensors couldn't track movement, due to the positioning of its biomechanical implants. He used this knowledge to seemingly vanish and reappear at will, always staying one step ahead of the frustrated predator. This is unprecedented, Professor Zethkar muttered, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. The simulation is designed to adapt, to learn from the participants' actions. But somehow, the human is learning faster. What Zethkar couldn't comprehend was that Marcus wasn't just using his brain. He was drawing on millions of years of human evolution. On Earth, humans had survived not by being the strongest or fastest, but by being the most adaptable. They could learn from any situation, no matter how deadly. The Void Stalker lunged again, and this time Marcus didn't dodge at all. He stepped to the side at the last possible second and slapped the creature on its flank as it passed by. The gesture was almost casual, like someone patting a large dog. The insult was not lost on the watching aliens. Their perfect predator had just been treated like a pet by a creature it was supposed to destroy. The lesson learned. 15 minutes into the simulation, something extraordinary happened. The Void Stalker stopped attacking. It crouched about 10 meters away from Marcus, its biomechanical head tilted in what almost looked like confusion. For the first time in the simulation's history, the perfect predator was unsure of what to do. Marcus sat down on a piece of debris and pulled out his water bottle. He took a casual sip while maintaining eye contact with the creature. The gesture was so human, so utterly calm in the face of mortal danger, that several alien students felt their worldviews shifting. What's he doing now? Keshla whispered. I think, said Vixara slowly. He's taking a break. Professor Zethkar's claws scraped against his control panel. In all his years of running these simulations, he had never seen anything like this. The Void Stalker's programming was cycling through its behavioral options, trying to find a response to a situation it had never encountered. Marcus finished his water and stood up. All right, big guy, he said to the creature. I think we've both learned something today. You're not as scary as you think you are, and I'm not as helpless as I look. He began walking toward the Void Stalker. Not running, not stalking, just walking with the confident stride of someone heading to class. The creature backed away. The watching aliens couldn't believe what they were seeing. The galaxy's most feared simulated predator was retreating from. A human who was treating the whole deadly encounter like a casual stroll. This is impossible, Gorth muttered. The Void Stalker doesn't retreat. It's programmed to fight until the participant is eliminated. But Marcus had done something the creature's programmers hadn't anticipated. He had removed fear from the equation. The Void Stalker was designed to hunt terrified prey, to feed on panic and desperation. Marcus had given it neither. Instead, he had turned the deadly encounter into a learning experience. He had studied the creature like it was a fascinating puzzle rather than a mortal threat. And in doing so, he had broken its programming. Marcus reached out slowly and actually touched the Void Stalker's armored hide. The creature flinched but didn't attack. It was like watching someone pet a dragon. "You know what your problem is?" Marcus said conversationally. "You were designed by beings who think killing is the hardest part of hunting. But any predator can kill. The hard part is understanding your prey well enough to catch them in the first place." He walked around the creature, pointing out design flaws with the casual air of a teacher giving a lecture. "Your thermal sensors are calibrated for standard galactic body temperatures, but humans run hot. Your audio pickups are tuned for alien vocal ranges, but human speech operates in frequencies you're not monitoring efficiently. And your tactical programming assumes your prey will behave rationally when terrified." The Void Stalker followed his movements with its head, like a student paying attention to an instructor. "The thing about humans," Marcus continued, "is that we don't become irrational when we're scared. We become more human. And being human means adapting, learning, and never giving up." 20 minutes had passed. Marcus had not only survived the unsurvivable simulation, he had turned it into an educational experience for both himself and the creature that was supposed to kill him. In the observation room, the alien students sat in stunned silence. They had come here to learn about combat, about survival, about proving their species' superiority. Instead, they had witnessed something far more profound, that they had seen what it truly meant to be human. A new understanding as the simulation entered its 25th minute. Professor Zethkar faced an unprecedented situation. The Void Stalker simulation had never run this long because no participant had ever survived this long. The system was beginning to strain under the computational load of trying to create new scenarios. Marcus, meanwhile, had begun teaching the Void Stalker how to hunt more effectively. It was perhaps the most absurd scene in the Academy's history. A human giving tips to a creature designed to kill him. "See, when you leap like that, you're telegraphing your intent," Marcus explained, demonstrating with exaggerated movements. "A good hunter stays unpredictable. Watch." He moved through a series of feints and direction changes that would have made a professional dancer proud. The Void Stalker attempted to mimic his movements, its massive frame looking almost comical. As it tried to copy human agility. In the observation room, Krosnar spoke for all of them. "He's not just surviving, he's making friends with it. This changes everything," whispered Keshla. "If humans can do this with our most advanced combat simulation, what else can they do?" Professor Zethkar realized he was witnessing history. Not just the breaking of a simulation record, but the demonstration of a completely different approach to problem solving. Where other species saw an enemy to be defeated, the humans saw a puzzle to be understood. Marcus had spent the last 5 minutes not just teaching the Void Stalker, but learning from it as well. He observed how its biomechanical parts integrated with organic systems, how its programming adapted to new situations, how its creators had tried to balance multiple competing directives. "The problem with designing a perfect predator," Marcus said, both to the creature and to his hidden audience, "is that perfection is static. It doesn't grow, doesn't adapt, doesn't learn. But imperfection has room to improve." As if to prove his point, Marcus stumbled slightly on a piece of uneven ground. Instead of trying to hide the mistake, he incorporated it into his movement, turning a near fall into a graceful roll that positioned him perfectly to avoid the Void Stalker's reflexive lunge. "See? Mistakes aren't failures if you learn from them," he called out cheerfully. 30 minutes passed. Then 35. The simulation system was now operating beyond its design parameters, creating increasingly bizarre scenarios to try to challenge Marcus. It spawned additional creatures, changed the environment, even altered the fundamental physics of the simulation space. Marcus adapted to each change with the casual ease of someone adjusting to a new classroom. When gravity reversed, he used it to gain a better vantage point. When the temperature dropped to levels that should have killed him, he found ways to generate heat through movement. When hostile plants began growing from the ground, he discovered which ones were edible. This isn't a combat simulation anymore, Professor Zethkar muttered. It's become something else entirely. What it had become was a perfect demonstration of human adaptability. While other species had evolved specialized abilities to deal with specific challenges, humans had evolved the ability to deal with any challenge. They were the universe's ultimate generalists. At the 40-minute mark, Marcus made a decision that would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. He sat down in the middle of the chaotic simulation and began to meditate, not the formal meditation of the Zentharan monks or the battle focus of Klingon warriors. Just a human being, sitting quietly, taking a moment to process everything he had learned. The Void Stalker, confused by this final act of defiance against its programming, sat down beside him, and there they remained as the simulation finally shut down from system overload. A human and the galaxy's most feared predator, sitting together in comfortable silence, like old friends sharing a sunset. When Marcus emerged from the chamber 43 minutes later, the observation room was dead quiet. He looked around at the stunned faces of his classmates and shrugged. "That was interesting," he said. "Same time next week, Professor?" Professor Zethkar could only nod, his understanding of combat, survival, and the nature of intelligence forever changed by a species that treated the impossible like homework and turned enemies into study partners. The human had not just passed the test. He had redefined what it meant to be tested.